Hey, I'm Saskia, and I'm a college student. I live with my roomie Ellie. She's fun at times, but other times, she can be super serious. Also, more often than not, it feels like she's completely attached to her annoying boyfriend Brett, as I'm always walking in on them kissing. So gross. But thanks to them, I got the chance to be around my crush. Then I myself somehow ruined it. I love rom-coms. Really love them. So naturally, when this amazing-looking rom-com hit the cinemas, I wanted to see it on its release date. At first, Ellie agreed to go and see it with me, but then the day before, she canceled on me. This made me mad, as she'd promised me. So I trailed after her around our house and kept on nagging her about it while she was trying to cook, study, and talk on the phone to Brett. All of my nagging paid off, as she eventually caved and agreed to come, but only on the condition that Brett came too. This sucked, as I didn't like him to be there at all. Besides, I didn't want to play gooseberry to these two. I mean, talk about awkward. I moaned at her for ruining our girls' night and told her she was a lame friend. Then she suggested that Brett's friend Trent could come too. Trent would go! He's my pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I mean, cuteness level? 10 out of 10. I have already seen him a couple of times at school and secretly admired him, though she didn't know about it. I was so excited about meeting Trent properly, so I spent ages doing my hair and makeup, and I put on this really cute dress. Probably that was the longest duration I spent in front of the mirror in my entire life. I wanted to impress him. Then maybe he could become my boyfriend, and I'd have my very own happy ending. Ellie and I showed up at the theater before them. Time ticked by, and I remained glued to the entrance. When it comes to plans, I'm always the punctual one. I hate it when someone's late. I mean, it's not hard to be on time. Jeez, they were almost half an hour late. What's wrong with them? I was mad. Super mad. Anger built up inside of me. I'm surprised steam didn't come out of my ears. But then, suddenly, Brett and Trent walked through the entrance. And just a second, all my anger vanished. Trent was wearing a navy shirt, my fave color, and looking so damn hot. My anger instantly melted, and I found myself smiling over at him. He said, "Sorry we're late. It's the traffic, and when we were coming." Before he could complete, I blurted out, "It's okay." Ellie gave me a strange look and was about to say something, but I hit her arm to stop her. She knew how much lateness bugged me. The boys mentioned they were hungry, so we went to get food. I was so hungry, my stomach was gurgling, but I didn't want to look greedy in front of him. The two lovebirds walked holding hands in front, leaving us behind. We walked in silence. I wanted to talk and not miss a chance to stare at his face, but as I didn't want to appear desperate, I chose to keep quiet. Just then, my stomach gurgled really loudly, but he acted like he hadn't heard. He was so sweet. Everyone else ordered puffs. But have you tried eating those without spreading them all over your lip? I was trying to impress Trent, not scare him off. So, to stay on the safe side, I ordered the potato bhaji, and I only ate 2, although I'm a big foodie. During the movie, Ellie and Brett occupied the corner seats, so I sat next to Mr. Cutie. The movie started, and they got into action. I was not eavesdropping, but I couldn't help but hear some weird noises coming from them. Trent smiled at me. I guess he heard them too. OMG. His dimples! You know, I have a thing for dimples. He looked even more handsome in the dim lights. Whenever a romantic scene came, I pictured me and him. I knew I had to slow down, but I couldn't. Everything was going well when suddenly, a very bad smell crawled into my nose. It was not bad, but disgusting. Worse than a rotten egg. Yeah, it was the smell of a fart. Our row had only 4 seats, and it was evident that someone among us had done the crime. It was so embarrassing. Worse still, my eyes teared up due to the stench. We all passed weird glances between us. Then Ellie said, "Be frank. Who dealt it?" I replied, "Accept it, Yar. I know who it is." She replied, "What is the proof?" And I said, "You're always doing it at home." She blushed bright red, and Brett laughed out loud. I never miss a chance to embarrass her. Little did I know, I had to pay such a huge price for this. She grinned at me, then said, "Well, everyone knows who ate potatoes today." Talk about embarrassing! Everyone, except me, obviously, laughed. And out of them all, Trent was the one who laughed the most. For the rest of the movie, Trent would look at me and laugh. Even more annoyingly, the fart culprit remained a mystery. Then, when we were on the way out of the cinema, I dropped my lipstick on the floor and had to bend down to pick it up. A big fart came out from me! Everyone in this world could hear it. And yep, including Trent, who was standing right behind me. They all laughed, and I just stood there, mortified. Worse still, they must think that the previous fart belonged to me too. But no! My fart didn't even have a smell. It was just like fresh air, and could be totally normal with no realization if it didn't sound like a bomb. That was the most awkward moment in my entire life. There was no way Trent would like me now. This sucked. As soon as I got home, I rushed up to my room and stayed there. I didn't want to see Ellie all smug. I didn't want to see anyone ever again. That night, I just lay on my bed and stared at the ceiling, concerned about how my life would go. Due to a nonsense fart, my crush had laughed at me, probably now hated me, and thought I was a loser. Now we could never be in a relationship together, or marry and have kids. Talk about a life ruiner! I'd end up some crazy cat lady, or even worse, stuck with this weird nerd at my college called Carson, the only person in this world who could ever like me. A message suddenly came. My heart flipped. It was from Trent. "Is your stomach okay?" This was so embarrassing. Would I ever live it down? "It's not funny, smiley face," I messaged back. Then, to my surprise, he replied with, "I just want to ask you out tomorrow. I have 2 tickets. It's a horror movie." Oh, damn. Not the cinema again. Was this a joke? Was he trying to humiliate me again? The cinema staff would remember my face, as I was the girl who created a bomb fart that everyone in the vicinity heard. I made up some excuse about having to study. This sucked, as it was a horror movie, and I know I just missed the chance to be a little weak cat in his arms. But what else could I do? To back up my story, I spent Saturday in the library. Yes, I know, talk about lame. This was so awful. It was a sunny day, but for sure, I had to pretend like I was super busy on something, in case him and my roomie ever talked and found out that I was just wrapping myself in my blanket feeling ashamed about my 2 farts. I sat down and flicked through a book, when Carson came and sat next to me. Yep, the nerd. He smiled at me, and I didn't want to be rude, so I smiled back. Suddenly, I heard a voice. "So here you are. Crazy busy with another guy?" It was Mr. Cutie himself, Trent. Turns out, he'd shown up with lunch and a coffee for me. I tried explaining to him that I didn't even know Carson that well. That's when Carson smiled over at me, grabbed my hand, then said, "We spend every Saturday together at the library, and now we're official." I sat there, frozen. This was madness. By the time I realized Carson was still holding my hand and pulled it away, it was too late, as Trent had stormed off. Then, messages continuously popped up from my friends. "You're with Carson? You guys are dating in the library? Seriously? I saw your picture. Carson the nerd posted it on Instagram with, 'Studying on Saturday with my love.' I checked my social media. Yep, Carson had just tagged me in a post with him. Now, as well as being the fart girl, Trent now also thinks I'm some sort of lying floozy. This is so not the case. I just want my happily ever after with him. Now what am I meant to do? Hey, it's Saskia, back again to tell you all about my not-so-successful love life. It started during a movie trip with my roomie Ellie, her annoying boyfriend Brett, and his dreamy friend Trent. Swoon! During the movie, someone let out a huge fart, and I ended up being blamed for it. Then, to make it worse, on leaving the cinema, I actually did fart in front of everyone. I thought I'd blown it with Trent, literally. So when he asked me out on a date, my embarrassment made me turn him down, and instead, I went to the library to study. Only while I was there, Trent appeared and saw me with my classmate Carson and came to the wrong conclusion. Worse still, now Carson seems to like me. Now my life's a mess, and Trent isn't talking to me. So, after an evening spent watching way too many cheesy romance films and consuming far too much ice cream, I realized that my self-pity parade wasn't the answer. I mean, talk about tragedy. I just couldn't hide away. No, I had to hold my head up high and be as resilient as the characters from my favorite rom-coms were. So, the next day at college, I forced myself to look nice and smile as I trailed after Ellie and Brett. Ugh. Seeing as Brett was friends with Trent, I thought it'd be easier to get Brett to explain to him that nothing was going on between me and Carson. Why don't you tell him yourself? Brett rolled his eyes. No, I wasn't going to tell him that. I was too nervous to meet him. Why do I have to explain to him directly? You just act like I care about him. I blurted out to cover my embarrassment. And at that very moment, Trent appeared from nowhere. His uncomfortable face made it known that he'd heard everything. Then Brett smirked and said, "Looks like I don't have to explain about Carson to Trent anymore. But would you like me to explain with him about your big loud fart the other night?" I stood there, mortified. I knew Brett was a jerk, but did he really have to bring the fart situation up now? Now everyone was looking at me like I was a comedian. For the rest of the day, I tried to keep a low-key. This was all Carson's fault. Why did he have to act like we were a couple? I needed to find him and tell him straight out that he was delusional. Only I couldn't find him in class, the library, or anywhere else in college. So following Ellie's suggestion, at my lunchtime in the canteen, I messaged him saying, "Why did you say all that stuff?" After a while, he answered, "I want to impress you, 'cause I think that I kinda like you." He's gotta be kidding me! I spoke out loud at the same time as I stood up from my seat, without recalling that I was in the middle of a busy canteen. Oh, great. Now people looked at me like a weird person. Again, just in one day. I wanted to yell out, "Nope! People, you've all got the wrong idea. The weird person here isn't me. It's the guy texting me right now." But getting back to reality, I sat down and mumbled sorry to everyone for my extra behavior. For real, if you like me, you should pursue me in the right way. Don't do such silly things like that. I wrote back. I thought that would be the end of it. Oh, how wrong I was. The messages from Carson didn't end. Instead, he bombarded me with questions, such as what's my favorite hobby, my favorite color, food I liked. At first, I ignored the messages, but then he messaged me. "I just want to be friends and learn more about you, as I truly care about you. If you want me to stop, then I will." Okay, so I felt kinda bad for him. As needy as Carson could be, he was a nice enough guy who didn't deserve the silent treatment, so I began messaging him back. And with Trent, things between us were terrible anyway. He basically acted like I didn't exist, and whenever he hung out with the others and I, he just scrolled through his phone so he didn't have to make eye contact with me. Talk about annoying! One day, tension between us even worsened. That time, I was sitting on the college lawn with the three of them, Trent, Brett, and Ellie, and Trent was ignoring me as usual, when out of nowhere, a girl appeared and angrily approached us. We all looked at Brett, as, let's face it, out of all of us, he was the most likely to mess up. But then the girl yelled at me. "You're a bad person, Saskia. You stole Carson from me." She also added that she used to be Carson's girlfriend, but not anymore because Carson liked me. Ugh! What was going on? I didn't like Carson, I said, but she was assertive that her Carson was too good to reject, except that I had a boyfriend already. Before I had a chance to think up a reply, Brett said, "Besides Carson, who else can like Saskia?" Right. Brett and his rude comment again, which made me want to kick him straight to the ground. I snapped back at him. "For your information, there's a very handsome guy chasing me, and maybe someday I will accept him." As I finished speaking, I was startled as Trent suddenly stormed off. OMG! That was so terrible. Now Trent thought I had someone else. Ugh! Why was my life such a mess? Then, to make it worse, about 1 week later, I walked out of class to see this pretty girl in the hall called Amy. She was flirting with Trent. Right in front of my eyes! Jeez! Why were there so many people interfering with our love story? Ellie and Brett, who had no sensitivity about my feelings, adding the mess Carson and his ex left to me. Now a girl wanted to steal Trent? Clearly, if it wasn't me, no one could help us. I needed to talk to Trent, without actually talking to him, as I sucked at doing this. So, taking inspiration from the genre of love, I decided to write a soppy letter. Yeah, you may say it's old-fashioned, but I say it's romantic. I was so absorbed in thought while I was walking to the lecture that I bumped into someone and dropped the letter in my hand. It was Amy, and she helped me pick it up. She saw Trent's name, and even a heart sign beside it. Cringe. Then she looked at me for a moment and said, I feel sorry for you, but I have to tell you that Trent has a girlfriend. What? I'm sure my heart actually sunk. Amy told me that she'd asked Trent out, and he'd turned her down because he liked someone else. I pictured Trent being all lovey-dovey with some other girl, and it made me feel so jealous. Naturally, I couldn't face my next lecture, so I skipped it and went home, with my undelivered love letter stuffed to the bottom of my bag. Later on that night, I went for a long walk to clear my head. That's when Carson messaged me. Why didn't you tell me that you have someone else? Why choose him? Why not me? Clearly, Carson's crazy ex had told him what I said. I wasn't in the mood for his messages right now. He'd caused me enough trouble. So I sent a clear message about my feelings. I lied. There's no other guy. Actually, I have one-sided feelings for Trent. I'm sorry. Carson didn't reply to me after that. Then Ellie called me insisting I come to a party. Brett even yelled on the phone that I had to come because they were too wasted. It wasn't like I had anything better to do, so I searched for the location Ellie sent me. As soon as I was at the front of the house, I felt so confused, as the house seemed too quiet for a party. Had Ellie sent me the wrong location? I mean, she didn't sound super drunk. Then the door opened. OMG. It was Trent! He walked out and asked me to follow him inside. The lighting was very dim, and no one was here. He took me to the middle of the kitchen, where I saw a small disco ball hang in the room ceiling. Suddenly, he took my hand in his hand, looked straight at me, and said the 3 words I never expected to hear from him. I like you. OMG. Did Trent really like me, or was I being pranked right now? My hand was trembling, and my silly thoughts even made me look around to see if anyone was hiding. But then he grinned at me. I guess you're stunned. But you should prepare for my next confession. He told me that Carson was his childhood friend. Carson teased Trent in the library because he knew Trent's feelings for me, but he didn't expect it to backfire. And to apologize, Carson offered to help Trent pursue me. First, Trent could pretend to be Carson to text and learn more about me. Then, to escalate the process, Carson asked a friend to pretend to be his ex, forcing me to speak out my feelings. Trent was so despaired by my response, so he decided to impersonate Carson one last time and sent that message to me, where he found out that I liked him. Immediately, Trent asked Ellie and Brett to help him out. Wow, this plan was definitely not normal, but the way he nervously admitted everything to me somehow made my heart flutter. I nodded my head as a sign of me forgiving him. Thanks, he smiled back. I saw his face in the middle of the dim flickering lights approaching mine slowly. This was it. Our first kiss was going to happen. But then I heard a great big fart. What? Brett, Ellie, and Carson appeared in the front door. They were all laughing hysterically, and Brett was holding a fart machine and said, Well, it's about time you two got together. Trent shooed them off. Then smiling, he said to me, Let's try that again, shall we? I nodded and we kissed. Talk about butterflies! And that's how I ended up with the cutest boyfriend ever. Oh, wait, hang on a minute. My story hasn't finished yet, because that night when I returned home, I received a message from Trent telling me that he was the one who made the first fart in the cinema that time. He said sorry to me, but he was too embarrassed to admit it right away. Really? This was a shocker, but also hilarious. As if our story could become so complicated just because of a very simple thing. Moreover, if that day both me and Trent farted at the cinema, wasn't that our destiny?